August is the month when the garden feels both unstoppable and fragile at the same time. The beds are overflowing, leaves stretch out in every direction, and there's fruit hiding under every layer of green. But it's also the time when the first signs of decline appear. Plants collapsing under their own weight, fruits rotting if I don't catch them in time, and there are also the quiet reminders that autumn is never far away. This month, I saw the garden at its most chaotic, most generous, and most unpredictable. From giant zucchini that grew into pumpkins, to cucumbers climbing sunflowers, to strawberries making one last push before resting again. There were moments of harvest joy, small frustrations, experiments indoors, and the creeping sense of the season turning. So, here is everything that happened in August, one day at a time. I started the month with checking on the giant pumpkin, sprawling like a green sea across the garden. The leaves were broad and lush, flowers everywhere, and in the middle of it all, a single fruit already the size of a small melon, with more forming behind it. It felt like the plant was finally ready to live up to its name. Right next to it, a sunflower stretched nearly 2.5 meters tall, towering over me now, while a zucchini pushed out leaves almost as large as the pumpkins. Both looked strong, almost too vigorous, like they were competing for space and light. Over in the chaos bed, order has completely disappeared. The marigolds and dill had taken over everything, turning the raised bed into one giant fragrant bush. The single black currant had already given its fruit earlier in the summer. The round zucchini was also thriving, sending out huge leaves that overshadowed its neighbors. Flowers were everywhere, fruits beginning to swell, and almost hidden, a small cucumber curling up on a sunflower stalk. These surprise combinations are what I love about the garden. One plant supporting another, often without my planning. In the strawberry bed, the plants were still pushing out runners, still green and healthy. I had also tucked 2 cantaloupe plants into tomato cages there, and to my surprise, they were flowering happily. Alongside them, a line of sunflowers kept growing steadily. Not huge, but promising. And in the next bed, a different kind of experiment was unfolding. Cucumbers climbing tall sunflowers, zucchini growing thick at their base, and tucked between them, my tiny fig tree, now producing its very first fruits. It was a miniature forest of sorts, layered, messy, but alive. On August 3rd, it was time to replant the tumbling tom tomatoes. They had been waiting in their little starter pots for a while now, and even the cat came over to inspect them before the big move, as if approving the new residents. I set up 3 long containers, a meter each, and planted 4 tomatoes in each one. 12 plants in total, in their final home for the season. These pots went straight to the balcony shelf, the 3-level stand that had slowly become my winter tomato station. Once the weather cools, I'll move the whole thing indoors, where these plants will keep producing well into late fall, maybe even throughout the winter. On August 4th, one of the sunflowers finally opened its flower at the very top, far above my head, nearly 2.5 meters tall. I had to crane my neck just to see it, and it felt like the garden had grown a skyline of its own. Down below, a bee was nestled deep inside a pumpkin flower, dusted yellow, almost disappearing into the bloom. A perfect little moment of pollination at work. The giant pumpkin itself kept pushing forward, throwing out more and more flowers, with several fruits forming. The largest was already about 20 centimeters across, round and solid, while dozens of smaller ones dotted the vines. Around the garden, more sunflowers were joining in, shooting upwards and starting to open buds. Each one was like a new lighthouse above the leaves. Meanwhile, on the balcony, the tumbling toms settled quickly into their new shell. 3 levels, 3 pots, 12 plants, already branching and flowering. The shelf is becoming a real indoor farming project in disguise. By August 7th, the strawberries gave me a surprise. Almost 400 grams in a single harvest. I didn't even pick them myself this time. I was busy, so someone else gathered them and just sent me pictures. Still, seeing that pile of red fruit was a quiet reminder of how much these plants have given this summer. On August 9th, I tried a bit of a garden matchmaking, manually pollinating a female pumpkin flower with a cut-off male bloom. These giants need all the help they can get, and I wanted to make sure at least one fruit would take. Then I turned indoors, where a grocery store rosemary got a second chance. What looked like a single plant turned out to be 2, tangled together in one small pot. I carefully teased them apart, gave them fresh soil, and set them up to grow on separately. But the big job of the day was the Aztec tomatoes. I transplanted 20 seedlings into larger pots, spacing them about 25 to 30 centimeters apart. These are meant for the windowsills, bright yellow fruits that will replace the previous Wilma plants and carry me through fall and winter. Compared to the cramped starter pots, this was like moving them into their own apartments. And yet, I still had 10 more Aztecs left over, waiting in their tiny cups, destined to join the tumbling toms later on the balcony shelf. The tomato cycle here never really ends. It just shifts indoors when the season changes. August 10th turned into a cucumber hunt. I went through the vines, moving leaves, checking every sunflower trellis, and one by one I kept finding them. 3 in the first video, another in the next, then one more, and another. The cucumbers had been hiding in plain sight, swelling quietly behind leaves until they were impossible to miss. By the end of the day, I had 6 cucumbers on the table, weighing in at 2.6 kilograms together. It was one of those moments where the garden suddenly feels abundant, like it's been saving up a gift. On August 12th, I checked the tumbling toms again. Just a week after transplanting, they were already covered in flowers. Small yellow stars everywhere, promising cascades of cherry tomatoes to come. Back in the garden, I found one of the cucumber plants had collapsed completely. Even so, there was still a big fruit developing on the vine. On August 13th, I went back to the garden beds and gathered another round of strawberries. Not as heavy as the August 7th haul, but still plenty, bright red scattered through the green leaves. While checking the cantaloupe plants, I found something new, a small fruit forming on one of the vines. It was only about the size of a tennis ball, but round, striped, and unmistakably a melon. A little promise of late summer sweetness. The strawberry harvest came to about 180 grams, modest but colorful and sweet. And that single cucumber from the collapsed vine? It weighed about 400 grams, solid, smooth, and proof that even accidents can end with harvests. By August 17th, one of the biggest sunflowers had already passed its prime. Its giant flower head had grown so heavy that the entire stalk had started leaning forward, dragging the plant down with it. I decided to cut the bloom off, not to waste it, but to admire it up close. The flower was the size of a dinner plate, golden and white, a little faded but still impressive. Another small reminder that nothing in the garden lasts forever. August 18th was the day of the zucchini giants. I tried to cut off one of the round zucchinis with nothing more than my tiny keychain knife. It took a while, but I managed. These French round zucchinis are supposed to stay small and tender, a bit bigger than a tennis ball. But this one had grown into the size of a pumpkin. On the table, it looked almost unreal. Round, green, swollen, well past what the seed packet promised. It felt like I'd accidentally grown a different vegetable altogether. Back in the strawberry bed, the little cantaloupe fruit was still hanging on, still the size of a tennis ball, but holding steady. I also cut off a regular zucchini that had grown quite large as well. It seems August was the month everything grew oversized. Then I checked on the giant pumpkin and noticed trouble. The largest fruit, which had been growing fast, started turning yellow and wrinkly. Its skin was soft to the touch and the stem looked damaged. It could have been blossom end rot, caused by inconsistent watering during the dry spell, or maybe because it was sitting on the damp ground. I'd also accidentally bent the stem earlier while moving the vine. Luckily, another fruit on the same plant was looking much better. Firm, round, and growing steadily. At least the season wasn't lost. Near the pumpkins, one of the sunflowers was bursting with blooms. 6 open flowers on one stalk, with more buds waiting to follow. The largest was already fading, but the plant still looked like a fireworks display of yellow petals. A pair of cucumbers dangled from the vines, thick and ready to harvest soon. The sunflower trellises were really working by now, holding the weight of these long green fruits. I also checked another tall sunflower, this one with a single big flower head on top. Not as flashy as the multi-flowered ones, but still striking. And yet, another zucchini plant was forming 2 fruits at the base. Not ready yet, but promising. By the end of the day, I had a small pile of vegetables laid out on the kitchen table. 1 giant round zucchini, 1 regular zucchini, and 2 salad cucumbers. Of course, my cat had to inspect them all carefully, as if approving the harvest. Later that day, I filmed the Aztec tomatoes in their new windowsill homes. 20 plants spread across the kitchen, living room, and bedroom. Most were already flowering, some even setting fruit. Indoors, the tomato season was just beginning. I still had 10 more seedlings waiting in starter pots, destined to join the tumbling toms on the balcony shelf later. The shelf itself was filling out, 3 tiers each with bushy tumbling toms, flowering heavily. Filming the top tier was tricky. At 1.8 meters high, plus pots and plants, the tops were brushing against the balcony ceiling. But that's fine. Once I move them inside, they'll have all the space they need. By August 22nd, it was clear I had left my grocery store basil in its tiny pot for far too long. When I pulled it out from its container, there were more roots than soil. A tight white mass holding the plants together. I'd planned to separate them, but at this stage it was impossible. So instead, I cut the plants down at the base, stripped most of the lower leaves, and left just the top pairs. The idea was to stop them from drying out too fast while they formed new roots. I put the cuttings into 7 small glass vases I had found on sale for just 20 cents each. They were shaped like little garlic bulbs, with narrow tops to keep the water from evaporating. Perfect for propagation. By the end, I had 7 tiny vases lined up on the countertop, each with a basil cutting starting its second life. It looked like a little indoor herb lab. I didn't stop there. I sowed parsley, dill, and spinach into fresh pots, lined them up on the windowsill next to the Aztec tomatoes, and gave them water. A small act of preparation for the colder months ahead, when fresh herbs will matter even more. On August 25th, my weather app showed something I wasn't ready for: a ground frost warning. The forecast predicted the night temperature would drop to just 3 degrees. Luckily, it was a fluke. The next day warmed up again, but it was a reminder that summer doesn't last forever. The season here is short, and by late August, you can already feel autumn pushing at the edges. Out in the garden, the sunflowers were at their peak. One plant had 8 flowers open, all lush and golden, attracting bees and bumblebees non-stop. At one point, I counted 3 bumblebees working the same stalk, buzzing from flower to flower. There was a catch though. These were ornamental sunflowers, a seedless variety. No pollen, no seeds, just decoration. I hadn't realized when I bought them, and it was a little disappointing at first. But they still served a purpose. They drew pollinators to the garden, and their blooms lasted longer than regular sunflowers, brightening the beds even as other plants started to fade. The same day, I harvested another regular zucchini, thick, green and heavy. These plants just don't stop once they get going. The cucumbers were also climbing high on their sunflower trellises. One was especially big, hanging down like a pendulum, so I picked it. Another, smaller one I left to grow a bit longer. Then came a harder task, checking on the giant pumpkin. The largest fruit, the one I had hoped would keep swelling, had gotten worse. Its skin was soft, wrinkled, and starting to rot. I decided to cut it off. It's never fun to lose a big fruit, but sometimes you have to remove the failing ones so the plant can focus on the healthier pumpkins still growing. And indeed, another large fruit on the same vine was looking perfect. Smooth-skinned, round and firm. That one became the new hope for the season. Back in the kitchen, I weighted everything from the day. The zucchini came in at 1260 grams, a solid kilo plus harvest. The cucumbers weighted 558 grams, 336 grams, 425 grams, 346 grams, and 319 grams. The last one, 173 grams, was kinda crooked from laying on the ground and also had a few snail bites in it. And then the strawberries, a smaller haul this time, just 113 grams, but still sweet, still bright red, still summer in a bowl. So August 25th was one of those full spectrum garden days. A warning of frost, flowers buzzing with bees, vegetables piling up in the kitchen, and the tough choice to cut off a rotting giant pumpkin. It felt like the month in miniature. Abundance and loss, beauty and decay, all happening at once. August was the month of giants. Giant pumpkins, giant zucchinis, giant sunflowers towering above me. It was also the month of quiet endings. Strawberries giving their last flush, cucumbers collapsing, pumpkin fruit rotting before it could ripen. But throughout it all, there was abundance. Piles of cucumbers on the table, baskets of strawberries, zucchinis heavy enough to break the scale. Indoors, the next cycle began. Aztec and tumbling tom tomatoes flowering on the windowsills and shelves, basil cuttings rooting in glass vases, herbs sprouting for autumn. It was a month where the garden overflowed with life and also reminded me of its limits. A month where I had to harvest, replant, cut back and let go. August always feels like the climax of the season, the moment of fullness before everything turns. And this year, it gave me both its brightest flowers and its first signs of decline, all at once. Next comes September, the slow wind down, the final harvests, and the first true taste of autumn.